My life as Elijah Green, newly minted homeowner in the idyllic suburb of Meadow Creek Estates, was supposed to be peaceful. I had envisioned quiet evenings on the porch, the gentle rustling of leaves, friendly waves from neighbors as I tended. My garden, a Rockwellian dream, really. Instead, I found myself embroiled in a petty, yet relentlessly escalating war with the neighborhood's self-appointed sheriff, Karen Thurston. She lived directly across the street, a woman seemingly animated by a perpetual state of indignation and armed with an uncanny ability to find fault in everything. From the moment I unloaded my moving truck, Karen made it her mission to scrutinize every aspect of my existence, transforming my slice of suburban paradise into a battleground of passive-aggressive notes and thinly veiled threats. Apparently offended her refined sensibilities by daring to grow beyond the prescribed 2.5-inch limit, a transgression punishable in her eyes by social ostracism and a sternly worded letter tucked under my windshield wiper. My garbage cans, deemed an eyesore before the designated collection hour, were subject to her unsolicited rearrangement, often ending up strategically placed in the middle of my driveway as a passive-aggressive monument to my perceived transgressions. And heaven forbid I left a tool in the driveway for more than 10 minutes. It was as if a homing beacon activated within her, drawing her out of her meticulously decorated fortress to deliver a lecture on neighborhood aesthetics and property value degradation. These skirmishes, while irritating, were merely preliminary. Shots fired in what would become a full-blown mailbox maelstrom. I had invested a significant amount of time and effort into selecting and installing a new mailbox, a custom-made cedar beauty with sleek black metal trim. It was a statement piece, a subtle nod to my personal style amidst the sea of cookie-cutter suburban conformity. I spent an entire Saturday meticulously digging the post hole, ensuring it was perfectly level with the aid of a spirit level and an unwavering commitment to precision. I carefully mixed the concrete, painstakingly smoothing it around the base of the post, and waited anxiously for it to set, envisioning the admiring glances of my neighbors as they passed by. The next morning, my vision of suburban harmony lay shattered on the ground, quite literally. The mailbox, once a beacon of tasteful elegance, was now a mangled heap of splintered cedar and twisted metal. The crime scene was disturbingly clear, tire tracks etched into my meticulously manicured lawn, leading directly back towards the Thurston residence. Telltale streaks of red paint mirroring the exact shade of Karen's monstrous Lexus SUV. Initially, I approached the situation with a naive sense of optimism, clinging to the belief that perhaps this was all a terrible misunderstanding. I calmly crossed the street and confronted Karen, attempting to engage in a rational conversation about the unfortunate incident. Her response was as predictable as it was infuriating. With a dismissive wave of her hand and a condescending smirk, she declared that I must have installed the mailbox wrong, implying that my lack of expertise was solely responsible for its untimely demise. She offered no apology, no remorse, only a thinly veiled accusation of incompetence. It was at that moment that I realized this was not an accident. It was a deliberate act of aggression, a calculated assault on my property and my sense of peace. Fueled by a mixture of indignation and disbelief, I refused to be deterred. I rebuilt the mailbox, meticulously replicating the original design, reinforcing the post with additional concrete, stubbornly clinging to the hope that this was an isolated incident. 3 days later, history repeated itself. Only this time, the destruction was even more thorough, the mailbox reduced to an unrecognizable pile of debris. The tire tracks were bolder, the red paint more prominent, leaving no doubt in my mind about the perpetrator's identity. This pattern continued for 3 long months, a relentless cycle of construction and destruction. I replaced the mailbox 5 times, each iteration more reinforced than the last. I even experimented with sinking the post in a massive block of concrete, reinforced with rebar, a seemingly impenetrable fortress designed to withstand even the most determined assault. Karen, however, remained undeterred, her commitment to mailbox obliteration unwavering. She somehow managed to clip the corner of the concrete block with her SUV on her way to her weekly book club meeting, leaving a visible gouge in the paint and a smug look on her face. The financial burden of this mailbox war began to take its toll. Each custom-made mailbox cost a significant amount of money, and the constant repairs to my lawn were adding up. But the monetary cost was secondary to the psychological toll. Constant harassment and the feeling of being targeted in my own home were draining. I was losing sleep, constantly on edge, anticipating the next act of vandalism. Desperate for a resolution, I decided to file a formal complaint with the Homeowners Association, hoping that they would intervene and put an end to Karen's reign of terror. I meticulously documented each incident, gathering photographic evidence of the damaged mailboxes, the tire tracks, and the red paint on Karen's SUV. I prepared a detailed statement outlining the harassment and the financial damages I had incurred. I presented my case to the HOA board, confident that they would see the blatant injustice and take appropriate action. My hope was quickly extinguished. The HOA, it turned out, was a puppet organization controlled by none other than Karen Thurston herself. She chaired the grievance board, wielding her power with an iron fist, silencing dissent and protecting her own interests. My complaint was summarily dismissed, deemed inconclusive due to lack of definitive proof. To add insult to injury, Karen had the audacity to fine me for having a damaged fixture visible from the street, claiming that the dilapidated mailbox was a blight on the neighborhood and a violation of HOA regulations. I was trapped in a Kafkaesque nightmare, a system designed to protect the very person who was victimizing me. The HOA's complicit silence shattered any remaining hope. I had of finding a peaceful resolution through conventional means, I realized. That I was on my own, forced to take matters into my own hands. I stopped complaining and started planning, determined to end this ridiculous mailbox war once and for all. But on my terms. The failure of the HOA to address Karen's blatant vandalism forced me to reevaluate my approach. Complaining was futile. Reason was useless. I needed to think outside the box, literally. I needed to create a mailbox that was not only indestructible, but also served as a powerful deterrent. The idea began to percolate, a seed of vengeance. Planted in the fertile ground of my frustration, I spent hours researching materials, poring over engineering diagrams, and brainstorming potential solutions. I consulted with a local metal fabricator, a grizzled veteran of the construction industry, who listened intently to my outlandish tale of suburban warfare and offered his expertise with a knowing grin. The design I ultimately conceived was a masterpiece of engineering and subtle subterfuge. The foundation would be a solid steel base, sunk deep into the earth and encased in concrete, providing unparalleled stability and resistance to impact. The frame would be constructed from reinforced rebar, welded together to form a virtually unbreakable cage around the mailbox itself. The interior would be lined with shock-absorbing materials designed to mitigate the force of any collision and protect the contents of the mailbox. But the piece de resistance, the element that would truly elevate this mailbox from mere fortification to a device of righteous retribution, was the internal electric deterrent system. I consulted with an electrician, explaining my need for a non-lethal, yet undeniably unpleasant, shock to deter any further vandalism. He recommended a modified livestock charger, a device designed to deliver a brief but memorable jolt to unsuspecting cattle. We carefully calibrated the voltage to ensure it was within legal limits and posed no serious risk of injury, focusing instead on the psychological impact of the surprise electric greeting. The exterior of the mailbox was deliberately understated. I opted for a plain, black, powder-coated metal finish, conforming to Postal Service regulations and avoiding any unnecessary attention. I wanted it to appear innocuous, a wolf in sheep's clothing, concealing its formidable defenses beneath a facade of normalcy. Over the next few weeks, I dedicated every spare moment to constructing my magnum opus. I worked tirelessly in my garage, meticulously cutting, welding, and assembling the various components. I enlisted the help of my metal fabricator friend, who lent his expertise and equipment to the project, marveling at the sheer audacity of my plan. The neighbors, initially, curious about my activities, began to avoid me, sensing the air of quiet determination that surrounded my project. Karen, however, remained ever vigilant, her eyes constantly scanning my property, searching for any sign of wrongdoing. I made sure to keep my work shrouded in secrecy, concealing my progress behind tarps and strategic parking arrangements. Wanted to surprise her, to unveil my creation at the moment of its ultimate triumph. The final product was a testament to my ingenuity and my unwavering commitment to justice. It was a mailbox, unlike anything this neighborhood had ever seen, a silent sentinel standing guard against the forces of suburban tyranny. I christened it Mailbox 3000, a nod to its futuristic design and its unwavering dedication to protecting my mail. All that was left to do was install it and wait for Karen to take the bait. The anticipation was almost unbearable. After weeks of planning and construction, Mailbox 3000 was finally ready for its debut. Early the next morning, under the cover of dawn's soft light, I carefully installed the mailbox, meticulously aligning it with the property line and ensuring its stability. The steel base was firmly embedded in the concrete, the reinforced rebar frame standing tall, and the electric deterrent system fully charged and ready to deliver its shocking surprise. I retreated to my house, positioning myself strategically by the window, my coffee in hand, and my camera ready to capture the moment of reckoning. The wait was agonizing, each passing minute stretching into an eternity. I watched as Karen's house slowly awakened, the curtains twitching, the lights flickering on. I knew she was there, lurking within her suburban fortress, her eyes undoubtedly scanning my property, searching for any sign of weakness. Finally, the moment arrived. Karen's red Lexus SUV backed out of her driveway, its engine rumbling like a caged beast. She was on her usual morning routine, phone glued to her ear, latte precariously balanced in her hand, completely oblivious to the fate that awaited her. She accelerated down the street, her attention divided between her phone, conversation, and her caffeinated beverage. As she approached my property, I could see her subconsciously veer towards the curb, her trajectory perfectly aligned for a collision with Mailbox 3000. It was as if she was drawn to it, compelled by an insatiable need to assert her dominance. The impact was instantaneous and dramatic. Clang. The sound reverberated through the neighborhood, a deafening clang that echoed the years of frustration and petty tyranny I had endured. The Lexus jerked violently sideways, as if it had struck a brick wall. Karen slammed on the brakes, her latte flying through the air, splattering against the windshield. She stumbled out of the car, her face contorted with rage, her tirade beginning even before her feet touched the ground. She stormed towards the mailbox, her voice rising in pitch with each step, a torrent of expletives and accusations spewing forth from her mouth. She reached out to shove the mailbox, her hand outstretched, her intent clear. ZZZT. The spark crackled like a bug zapper on steroids, illuminating the air with a brief yet electrifying flash. Karen recoiled as if she had been struck by lightning, her body convulsing, her face contorting into a mask of shock and disbelief. She yelped, a high-pitched shriek that pierced the morning air, and landed flat on her behind in the grass, her wig askew, her entire being radiating a palpable sense of humiliation and defeat. The sight was both comical and deeply satisfying. Emerged from my house, my coffee mug in hand, a serene smile playing on my lips, I casually leaned against the porch railing, surveying the scene with an air of detached amusement. "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with mock concern. "Another mailbox accident? Might need to adjust your steering." Karen, still reeling from the electric shock, sputtered incoherently, her eyes darting wildly, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. She shrieked something about lawsuits, deadly weapons, and called 911, her voice trembling with indignation. The police arrived within minutes, sirens wailing, lights flashing, disrupting the tranquility of the neighborhood. I calmly presented my case to the officers, explaining the history of the mailbox vandalism, the HOA's complicity, and the measures I had taken to protect my property. I produced the permits, the design specs, and the voltage report. proving that the electric deterrent system was non-lethal and legal for deterrent purposes on personal property. The officers, initially skeptical, listened intently to my explanation, their expressions gradually shifting from concern to amusement. They examined the mailbox, marveling at its construction and the ingenuity of its design. They tested the electric deterrent system, confirming that it delivered a harmless, yet undeniably unpleasant shock. Meanwhile, Karen continued her tirade, ranting and raving about my criminal behavior and demanding my immediate arrest. The officers, however, remained unmoved, their attention focused on gathering evidence and assessing the situation. After a thorough investigation, they issued Karen a citation for reckless driving on private property and misuse of HOA funds. It turned out that she had been reimbursing herself for mailbox damages all year, using HOA funds to cover the cost of her reckless driving habits. The revelation sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, exposing Karen's hypocrisy and abuse of power. The officers left, sirens fading into the distance, leaving Karen humiliated and defeated in her front yard. The neighbors, who had gathered to witness the spectacle, exchanged knowing glances, their faces etched with a mixture of amusement and satisfaction. The reign of terror was finally over. The fallout from the mailbox incident was swift and decisive. At the next HOA meeting, Karen was subjected to a barrage of criticism and demands for her resignation. Faced with overwhelming pressure and the threat of legal action, she had no choice but to step down from her position, relinquishing her control over the neighborhood. The atmosphere in Meadow Creek Estates underwent a dramatic transformation. The oppressive cloud of fear and intimidation that had hung over the community for so long dissipated, replaced by a renewed sense of optimism and camaraderie. Neighbors began to interact with each other more openly, sharing stories and laughter, reclaiming their sense of community. My new mailbox, Mailbox 3000, stood as a silent symbol of resistance and resilience, a testament to the power of ingenuity and determination in the face of tyranny. It hasn't even gotten a scratch, a constant reminder of the day Karen's reign ended. The HOA was reorganized, with new members elected who were committed to transparency, fairness, and the best interests of the community. The rules were revised, eliminating the arbitrary regulations and draconian enforcement policies that had plagued the neighborhood for so long. As for me, I finally found the peace and quiet I had initially sought when I moved to Meadow Creek Estates. I could tend my garden without fear of criticism, leave my tools in the driveway without attracting unwanted attention, and enjoy my evenings on the porch without feeling like I was under constant surveillance. The experience taught me a valuable lesson about standing up for myself and fighting for what is right, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. It also taught me the importance of community and the power of collective action. The legacy of Mailbox 3000 lived on, not just as a physical object, but as a symbol of hope and empowerment for the residents of Meadow Creek Estates. It served as a constant reminder that even the most entrenched power can be challenged and overcome with creativity, determination, and a little bit of electric shock. And though I never sought to be a hero, it was nice to no longer hear about the length of my grass.